What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel and another Outriders video. Today we're going to be looking at AP Trickster, but it's not Shield Beast. I know, Shield Beast Trickster at the moment is the hot ticket, and I do have a Shield Beast build coming out for the Trickster later this week. But specifically today I want to focus on an extremely ramped up Temporal Blade and Goals Beyond Understanding in the Pax Tree, the interaction between those, and the ability for this build to just straight up delete some bosses right out with one hit. So obviously we are focusing on ramping up Temporal Blade as much as we can through bottom tree Trickster and using skills like Venator's Knife and Hunt the Prey to further on bolster up our AP, as well as alongside some really good mods on our weapons like Fortress and Mages, which then once we reach that ramp up cap allow us to dump two really powerful Temporal Blades onto a boss or an enemy, and this basically usually does almost half of the boss's HP in one go. Now, if you proc Goals Beyond Understanding during that combo, then you'll just flat out delete the boss and the fight will be over. This happens every 3 to 4 times that you pull this combo off, so it is really effective at just chunking bosses down, and that I would say is really the strength of this build. Now, because we do have access to Venator's Knife and through some creative secondary weapons, we can also make the build reasonably decent at also mobbing and taking down large groups of enemies. Although I will stress this again, this is absolutely an assassination build, and the idea here is to drop a payload on a boss, on an enemy, that essentially kills them within seconds. Now this works whether you're playing single player or whether you're playing in groups, because the ramp up is just so insane. It's to the magnitude of 200%. Sometimes this happens twice in a row, so if for some reason the boss has any chance of living, then that second hit essentially seals the deal. Now this is a style of play with the Trickster that I've enjoyed since the base game. I know that firepower builds with Trickster have always been really good, and I do think that Twisted Rounds, especially combined with the new Shield Beast set, is really powerful. But I've always been an AP player at heart, meaning like I like to use my abilities to essentially take enemies down, and I don't want to be bothered too much with ammo maintenance and watching my gun and all of that. So this perfectly suits that. Those of you that have been a fan of the channel will remember me back in the day making a Space Ninja build, which is again focused around Temporal Blade, and I really did have a hell of a lot of fun with that, and we're right back at it again with this. This for me, while playing Shield Beast is really cool, but this for me is the preferred way of playing the Trickster, because I just feel like it fits into kind of like the design of the Trickster, being this darting in and out of combat and delivering these massive decisive assassination hits before sort of melting away again. When it comes to the actual build itself, we'll do the same thing we always do. We'll look at the weapons, then the armor, the skills, we'll talk about rotation, then we'll look at the class tree, and we'll finish with the Pax Tree and some suggestions to Ascension Choices that you can make. Now, please do ignore the transmog. This is of course just a way for me to keep track of the items in my inventory so that I don't accidentally delete them. But of course we are focusing on the Edge of Time legendary set for the Trickster, because that gives us 100% additional Temporal Blade damage, and Temporal Blade is the star of this build basically. So for our primary, what we want is we want a weapon that's really good at ramping damage. This is 4 boss kills. You don't need this to kill trash. The combination of Venators and Temporal Blade will take care of mostly everything. And if you combine it, for instance, with a secondary, like here I'm just literally using an old school Anemoy with Moaning Winds and Radiation Splash on, you can essentially wipe trash's ass all over the place, because even by for instance jumping into a group of enemies with Hunt the Prey and then basically cycling the Anemoy, then you essentially kill all the trash around you, especially if you've hit them with knife, and then whatever is left behind you can essentially just Temporal Blade out of existence. Now it's important to have this ramp up weapon, because like I said, even though you do deal a lot of damage, if you want to be getting those insane one rotation wipes or just one hit kills, then you do want to be ramping up your damage as much as possible. And there really is no better combination for this at the moment in the game than Fortress and Mage's Rage together. So any weapon that you can get those two on together and that you can land crits with, that's all you need. I specifically have this on the Damascus offering here because this is also a really good gun to use on Shield Beast. But like I said, just as long as you get Mage's Rage and Fortress on there, then you're good to go. So pistol doesn't really matter, I'm just carrying whatever there. Now if you for instance want to just be mobbing and you want to just be doing expeditions or something like that, then you technically speaking don't even need a ramp up, because your standard rotation will be enough to kill most bosses in the game with one rotation as well. So in that case, what you can do is maybe look at something that you know, does a little bit more AoE damage and helps you clear trash quicker. Something like a Funeral Pyre with Shadow Comet Claymore, and then whatever third mod you can get on there, like I have Omen on here for instance. Now when we get over to the gear itself, this is actually a combination of Edge of Time and Shield Beast pieces. So we got 3 Edge of Time and 2 Shield Beast pieces. That means that I have 1 dead mod on here, and it's on the chest, and I'll explain. But what we are looking for is we're looking to stack as much anomaly power as we can, and of course we do want cooldown reduction as well, and then a little bit of skills life leech surely doesn't hurt, because we do want to be actually feeding a little bit of life back to us while we're in the mix and taking damage, even though we are stacking shield and, you know, all of those things. Now specifically when we are looking at the first mods here on the headpiece, I've got double slice on here, which says that damaged enemies are additionally cut with an anomaly slice dealing 50%. So with this build we have access to 2 temporal blades, so that's slice and then you get this effect, and then slice and then you get this effect. So technically speaking, temporal blade kind of procs like 4 times. Then we have Captain Hunter on here, because again we wanna really expand on that damage to you know, captains, elites, bosses, all of that stuff. Trash doesn't matter with this build. And then I've got Danger Close on here, because for us to deliver Temporal Blade onto enemies, we of course have to get into close range. And a lot of the times the combo says that, you know, essentially we load up on damage, then we hunt the prey, and then we unload. And in that case, even if you're just fighting one enemy, you're at least getting a 6% increase to anomaly power. In the example of where you have a bunch of enemies clumped up together and you do this, you get the full benefit of a 4 stack, which is a nice 24% increase to anomaly, and that deals a whole bunch of damage. Then on the chest itself, I'm using the Shield Beast chest here, and that's why I have a dead mod here, because I have a mod here that's 4 twisted rounds. Now, as soon as I can get a purple piece that has anomaly power and has cooldown reduction on it, and then a good combination of mods that I can work with, I will of course replace this, because like I said, Skull Piercer does nothing for us here. But we do have Arms and Anomaly on here. This stacks alongside what we're already trying to do with mages, where we try to ramp up mages by hitting crits. So this just gives us even more anomaly power, again, to just deliver that payload. No resistance against the fortified is an important combination here, because alongside our armor piercing and everything that we get in this build, we essentially using armor piercing to translate it into resistance piercing, which translates into anomaly power. Then when we go over to pants, I have some mods here as well which make Venator's Knife better. Venator's Knife in a way becomes a boost skill for us, but also becomes a debuff skill for us. Boomerang blades essentially makes the knives go around a second time. Oftentimes on trash, the second rotation is enough to wipe it out. So if you have a large clump of enemies together, and as we talk about some more other mods which we have for Venator's Knife, which we'll look at just now, you'll often find that if you launch Venator's Knife into a large cluster of enemies, it'll bounce, and then as it comes back, it procs effects and everything like that and starts blowing up the mods, and or rather the enemies, and just, you know, killing them outright. So a lot of the times you don't actually even have to intervene with any weapon fire or anything else. Now Strong Slice on here increases the base damage of Temporal Slice, which is good. Temporal Slice is the bread and butter of this build. It is how we murder bosses, and so this just makes that hit even more harder. And then we have Trophy on here, which says that successful shots on enemies marked by the knife make them drop energy orbs that grant shield. Now, in the case of if you seem to be taking a lot of damage or something like that, if you're getting hit by a lot of stuff, then a quick sort of get out of jail card for you can be that you hit a swath of enemies with Venator's Knife, and then you just sweep across them with whichever weapon you have in your hand. When you do that, every enemy that has the Venator's Knife buff on them, and you'll have seen it in the footage that was on earlier, will drop these little orbs which end up giving you shield. So it's a good way for you to essentially deal with like a problem where you are starting to take a lot of damage. And what you can do is you can Venator's Knife and then jump right onto the enemies and then just close range spray them down. And as soon as you spray them, then these orbs will start popping out, and you'll actually get health from that, as well as from actually damaging them with your weapon like that. Then when we get over to the gloves itself, we have Slash on here. We do want 2 temporal blades. That's super important. And we have Cut Loose on here, which actually drops our cooldown of temporal blade as well. Again, the more temporal blades you can get out, the more fat damage you can deal. And even though we sometimes get the juicy one-hit delete from Goals Beyond Understanding, when that doesn't proc, we have to be ready to introduce another 2 temporal blades, or possibly another 4 to the enemy, especially if you're playing in groups where the other people in your group are not dealing as much damage, and this just helps you get those out quicker. Now, Cut Them Deep is really good, and it's a super awesome debuff that you get from Venator's Knife. And this says that elites marked by the knife receive 30% more damage. Now, this is why Venator's Knife is such a good part of this combination, because in the case of, like, for instance, fighting the final Arbiter, this can help you deal even more damage to that boss, because you're sure that you're going to hit the Arbiter, and then you're going to jump on him, and then you're going to slash, and that's just going to deal a whole bunch of additional damage. Now, last but not least, we have the boots. I've got Anomaly Echo on here, which is again gives me more anomaly power on skill activation. Your skills are on fairly low cooldown, so generally speaking, this boss should be up for the, well, not boss, this buff should be up for the majority of your fight. Then we have Hive Cut on here, which says that damaging an enemy marked by skill also activates the effect on other marked targets within 6 meters, dealing 50% of the initial damage. Now, this is what I meant by this. What you'll see is that Venator's Knife, especially when you combine it with Boomerang Blades, has this interaction that when you throw it into a group of trash, and as Venator's Knife moves through the trash and marks them up, when it gets to the end and it starts moving back, it actually triggers its own Hive Cut effect, which then causes this sort of cascading explosion effect that deals damage to all of them. Now, you can't, of course, control which enemies are hit by this, but generally speaking, if you can aim it in such a way that, for example, you hit the bigger enemies, then this is usually enough to wipe them all out, and you're just left with the trash, which you can also then just mop up. Then Unstoppable Force on here is, like I said, the combination that we have here. So we are translating Armor Pierce into Resistance Pierce, which then translates into Anomaly. All right. Now, when we then go over to our skills and just talking about the rotation, when we're moving through trash, rotation doesn't really matter. I mean, you can just dump your skills as you want, and you can just move across the map. Like I said, use the reload meta if you want to. Just stick to the LMG and just mow them down by empowering your skills and then hitting them with the Venator's Knife, Hunter Prey, Temporal Blade combo. That's fine. But on bosses themselves, and when we get to the class tree now as well, you'll understand a little bit better. But on bosses themselves, the combination here is essentially to ramp up with your gun. So you'll shoot and get those crits until you see Fortress proc or something like that. That's usually my sort of, barometer for now. Like, cool, it's go time. So as soon as you ramp up and you get the green splash from Fortress, then I throw the Venator's Knife, and immediately after throwing and this is on a boss, of course. Immediately after throwing Venator's Knife, I Hunter Prey onto the boss, and then you can still melee at this point to get another 30% additional anomaly. But the problem with that is then you would consume the buff that you get from that next hit for Temporal Blade. So it's better to not melee at this point and slash and see if that kills the boss. Usually that actually does more than half of the boss's damage, life bar damage. Or if you proc Goals Beyond Understanding, then the boss is just flat out dead. But in that case, if that doesn't kill the boss, then you go melee and you ramp up again by going melee, Venator's Knife, Hunter Prey, slash. Mostly everything dies to that. I hardly see anything surviving past that. So when we get over to the class tree, we want to be picking up as much anomaly power as we possibly can. And that's due to the fact that all of our damage, of course, comes from that. So we go bottom tree. We also want to go deep bottom tree so we can get to Altered Executioner, which gives us additional anomaly power per every enemy that's in close range, which once again just ramps us up because we have to get in close to use Temporal Blade. So that's it. So we go along the bottom, we pick up anomaly power, we pick up resistance piercing because that also translates into damage for us. And we do pick up anomaly scything, which is the melee skill that I was referring to earlier, which basically says that when you activate the skill, now bear in mind you don't actually have to hit anything with this, so you can just do it away from that, but just doing that gives you additional anomaly power of 30% for 5 seconds. So that's also a pretty massive buff. It is something that you kind of have to wrap your head around as a rotation to remember to do, but it really does actually do a hell of a lot more damage. And any of you that are playing Shield Beast will already know that this is also an integral part of that combination as well. So then we move along, picking up more anomaly power. I do get Wither Scything as well here, because this just says that our melee skill, which we're already using, if we actually do use it on an enemy, it inflicts weakness on all of the enemies that you hit. So if you do an AoE slam, it's going to make weakness on all those enemies. Then we get up counter shield here, because this says that when we activate deception skills, this is all the ramp up mechanics that we were talking about earlier. So when we activate deception skills, it increases our anomaly power by 50% for 10 seconds. Of course, we have Venator's Knife, which is our deception skill here. Then we do get combat shields timeline as well, because this says when we activate movement skills, we also get 50% anomaly power. And of course, Hunter Prey is a movement skill. So just by going Venator's Knife and then Hunter Prey, that's a massive ramp up to our anomaly. Then when we get over here, we do get Continuum, which gives us a little bit of cooldown. And we do want to pick up Anomalic. Is it Anomalic? Anomalic, Jesus. Acceleration. Now, when your damage skill ends, increases your anomaly power by 50% for 10 seconds. Now, our Temporal Blade is on a super low cooldown, so this means that we are ready for the next set of Temporal Blades within the timeline of these 10 seconds. So that's just going to further on accentuate your damage. Then we also have Leap of Clincher here, which says activating your movement skills gives you 25% resistance piercing for 10 seconds. Again, just resistance piercing translates into additional anomaly fire. So you can see here that already here we've identified 4 of these capstones, which just boost up our anomaly power even more. Now, we also have Sign of the Void here, which says at the end of any damage skill increases your armor piercing by 30% and your resistance piercing by 25% for 10 seconds. Basically, what this means is that whatever does survive that first rotation of Temporal Blades, the second rotation of Temporal Blades are going to be that much more disgusting, and they're going to hit that much more if you can pull it off in that window of timing that you have available there. Then we also do get Shielded Readiness here, which says that we're not healed for any enemy that dies in close range. Instead, it gives us shield. So this is just giving us an additional way to survive a little bit more damage. That means that as long as we're in the mix, as long as we're in amongst enemies and dealing damage and just, you know, hitting our abilities as much as we can, it is relatively difficult for us to die, especially if you play around this mechanic. Then, as mentioned, Altered Executioner gives us 6% additional anomaly power for every enemy that's in close range. So even if there's only one, that's 6% flat. If there's more than that, if there's like 10 enemies standing around, that's 60% additional, which is huge. When we look at the Pax Tree itself, of course, we want to be going to Goals Beyond Understanding. That is our overall most important thing that we're trying to do here. However, because we have Meticulous Schema at the end here, which says 200% of killing damage on enemies tagged with deception skills are divided amongst other tagged enemies. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a really good ability to use if you're using something like Time Rift. So if you're using something like Time Rift, then you're going to be hitting a whole bunch of enemies in a wave, and if you duplicate that damage, or if you kill enemies, then 200% of that damage will be shared amongst everyone. And especially with the mods that you can put on Time Rift, you can make Time Rift deal quite a bit of damage. So that means that it makes Time Rift very lethal and hitting out against a swath of enemies. In our case here, we're using Venator's Knife, and unless you use a whole bunch of mods on Venator's Knife, it doesn't actually hit nearly as many as you can hit with Time Rift. So for me, Meticulous Schema is not that important here. If I was to redesign this build in a way to actually use Time Rift instead of Venator's Knife, then I would consider Meticulous Schema here. However, in this case, what I do is I go 1 point into Damaged, which says that damaging enemies with damage skills increases your damage by 10% for 5 seconds. And one of the skills that it benefits here, of course, is our beautiful slice, our Temporal Slice, or Temporal Blade rather. So when we then go to the bottom here, we pick up Trigger Man, which says your damage is increased by 15% for each skill on cooldown. Again, like I said, what you're going to do is you're going to be going Venator's Knife, you're going to Hunter Prey, you've got 2 skills on cooldown, and then you're going to go Blade, and that's going to give you 30% on that first blade. But we then also pick up is Cheap Shot. This says your class melee skill lowers enemies armor and resistance by 30%. This is another reason why it is good for you to work melee into the rotation in some way or form, because like I said, this will just overall benefit your additional damage that you can do to bosses. We get Failsafe Protocols, which is just some great damage mitigation for us. This says that when your health drops below 30%, you get a 50% shield and a 20% damage mitigation for 3 seconds. So in those 3 seconds, you're going to be really chunky, and that can, you know, often help you with pushing through additional damage to either get out of the red or to basically kill whatever is giving you trouble. Failsafe Protocols can be triggered every 10 seconds, so that means there's a 7-second cooldown before you can get it again, basically, right? So then well, there's a 7-second after the effect wears off. I hope I'm being clear with that. It goes beyond understanding. Really, I would say that the star of this build alongside Temporal Blade is that damage done to elites tagged with deception skills has a 25% chance to be increased by 200%. So often what happens with this is, and again, like you could see in the previous footage, is you'll essentially throw the Venator's Knife, you'll Hunter Prey, you'll slice, and you'll just check the boss's life, go like, and he'll be gone. And that'll mean one of those 2 slices proc this effect and just basically deleted the boss. And if you then go back and review the damage numbers, you're going to see millions and millions of damage. And obviously that was way too much for the boss to handle. Now, when it comes to the Ascension Tree, this is a baby trickster, so I don't have access to a lot. I only have access to 30 points at this moment in time. My first 10, of course, I focus on anomaly damage, which is just additional damage on top, which is really, really good if you play AP or just in general. And then next up, I picked up anomaly power. And then after that, I picked up some resistance piercing. So all 3 of these are just going to accentuate my damage. If I do struggle a little bit with survivability, and maybe you don't have all of the mods ready yet like I have on the gear, so you're not dealing quite as much damage and you're not quite as sturdy yet, then you can of course look towards maybe putting some stuff into endurance, maybe putting some stuff into skill leech or something like that. Even though the basic fact is that with Trickster it's a little bit difficult, because any damage that you deal and everything that you do is actually going to tend to give you shield, and if you have shield, your life bar isn't taking damage. So there's really like a kind of like a catch-22 there, where you know, any kind of skill leech that you are boosting up for yourself, that's only going to you know increase your life. It's actually not going to increase the amount of shield that you get or something like that. So that's of course something to bear in mind, but definitely focus around you're getting, I would say, the best defense here is a strong offense. If you can make sure that your abilities hit hard enough, you're not going to have to worry about survivability all that much, because the shit's going to be dead. And that's it for the build. I've had a ton of fun with this. I've actually used this build to farm out the pieces that I needed for Shield Beast, because I was lucky enough to get a good combination of mods and good items to drop for this, and this helped me farm the Arbiter relatively easier than I would have with any other build, due to the fact that you can get this 25% chance to just flat out delete the boss and just move on with your life. Let me know in the comments down below what you are playing with Trickster. I'm relatively sure it's probably Shield Beast. I know that there's a terminal velocity build out there as well. I know that I've been hearing some rumblings about that being good as well, so keep an eye on the channel for something like that coming as well. But most of all, just let me know what you're still enjoying about the game. If you have dipped your toes into Trickster already, or if you were waiting like I did. I finally started to sort of like work on some builds for Trickster now, after having done a whole bunch for Pyro and Techno, which are still also coming to the channel. But that's it for the video, and that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. It's just super important to me that you have a fantastic morning, afternoon, and evening wherever you are in the world. And until next video, fucking cheers.
They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.